Hello, everyone again. Welcome and thank you for joining Dragon Trail International and South African Tourism for today's webinar, where we will be going behind the scenes at South African Tourism's recent virtual fam trips for the Chinese market. We believe that these virtual fam trips are a real game changer for B2B tourism marketing, with relevance that will go far beyond the point where pandemic-related travel restrictions have been relaxed. So we wanted to take this opportunity to talk about what these fam trips are, their advantages, and also what goes into producing them, especially in terms of working with local tourism partners and local tour guides in the fam trip destination. My name's Sienna Parulis-Cook, and I'm Director of Marketing and Communications at Dragon Trail International. Joining me today from South Africa is South African Tourism's Hub Head Asia Pacific, Mansoor Mohamed, and joining from Shanghai is Dragon Trail's Vice President of Content, Wang. So Michael, thank you so much for joining today to share your experience and expertise on virtual fam trips. On our agenda today, I'm going to kick things off by giving an introduction to what a virtual fam trip is, what kinds of content are included, and some thoughts about why the time is right for this development. Then I will turn over to Mansoor to talk about South African tourism's strategy for Chinese marketing, as well as learnings from the virtual fam trip experience. Then we'll hear from Michael about content creation for these virtual fam trips, including video shooting, working with local tour guides, and creating content for a 2-day fam trip for Chinese travel trade professionals. Finally, we'll move to a Q&A session where we'll have a small panel discussion with our speakers. And at that time, you're also welcome to ask your own questions. Actually, you can send in questions at any time during the webinar by using the Q&A button on your Zoom control panel, and we will do our best to answer as many questions as possible at the end of the webinar. One more thing to note is that I will be sending out today's presentation slides, as well as a link to a recording of the webinar to everybody, and you should expect to receive that either later today or tomorrow. So you will have all of the materials from today's webinar, either for your own reference or if you'd like to share them with any colleagues who you think would be interested but weren't able to attend the live webinar today. For those of you who might be joining us for the first time, I'd like to give a quick introduction to Dragon Trail International before we get started with the webinar content. Dragon Trail International is a marketing solutions company with expertise, especially in tourism and in the Chinese market. We're headquartered in Beijing with offices in Shanghai and Xi'an, as well as an international office in London. Our services include B2B and B2C digital marketing, market research and strategy consulting, virtual and hybrid events, and market representation services. We are very proud to work with leading tourism brands all around the world, including tourism boards, airlines, cruise lines, hotels, attractions, and others. And you can find much more information about the clients that we work with, our services, case studies of our work, and also lots of free resources about the Chinese outbound tourism market on our website, www.dragontrail.com. So on that note, I'll move into the webinar section and also turn off my video so that you can see the slides fully. So at this point, I'm going to be presenting some background information on virtual fam trips, especially those run earlier this month with South African Tourism. So first, I'd like to talk about the development of the concept. South African Tourism's March fam trip was definitely the most sophisticated version of the virtual fam trip so far, but it's something that Dragon Trail has been working on to some extent since last year. And even before that, Dragon Trail has been supporting tourism brands to do live webinars for the Chinese travel trade since early 2018. But those webinars were generally quite formal presentations that were accompanied by PowerPoint presentation slides. Then last spring, Dragon Trail partnered with the Singapore Tourism Board for a 3-month-long virtual roadshow. And that roadshow included weekly live broadcasts. During those broadcasts, we started to use short sections of video footage to give Chinese travel agents an idea of what it was really like to visit Singaporean tourism destinations at that time, showing not just the attraction, but also its COVID protocols, including hand sanitizer stations, contactless payment, and mask wearing. This idea of a virtual fam was developed much further during South African Tourism's virtual roadshow in China in September 2021. This accompanied an online roadshow and one-on-one business meetings with 4 days of broadcasts. The first day was an opening ceremony, and then there were 3 days of virtual fam trips, including a day on safari and a number of hotel tours. These fam trips were hosted from a studio in South African Tourism's Beijing office, but they primarily consisted of video footage that was taken in South Africa. They attracted nearly 350 live viewers with 155 playbacks within the first month. Then we get to South African Tourism's March 2020 fam trips. And like the September 2021 fam trips, they accompanied the Tourism Board's virtual roadshow. Before I talk more about the details of the fam trips, I wanted to show you a very quick 1-minute long video to give you a firsthand impression of what the content included and looked like. Okay, so that was a rather whirlwind tour through the 2 days of fam trips. So I'd like to go into a bit more detail to kind of give context about what the content for that was like. The 2-day live, there were 2 live streaming sessions, 1 hour each, held on the 7th and 8th of March. And this was part of a 3-day long online roadshow. The roadshow also included 3.5 hours each day of one-on-one meetings between Chinese travel agents and tourism partners in South Africa. The fam trips were hosted live in Beijing by Michael Wang, who's today's second guest speaker. But most of the content in the fam trips was filmed in advance in South Africa and then edited by Dragon Trail's video team. The first day focused just on Cape Town, including activities and accommodation. On the second day, the fam trip took viewers to a rooibos tea farm on the Western Cape. Then they went ziplining in a national park on South Africa's south coast and ended up on a tour of Durban on the east coast. So this all spanned a distance of more than 1,200 kilometers. The fam trips were led by 3 guides. There were 2 Chinese guides and 1 Mandarin-speaking South African who had previously lived in China for a decade. And most of the footage was professionally shot, though for the segment at Garden Route National Park, this was actually shot by the guide himself using a GoPro camera. That was much more practical in terms of logistics of taking cameras up onto a zip line. And also it was better for really taking the audience on his ziplining adventure with him, so you can go whizzing through the treetops much more easily with a GoPro. As you saw in the short video, the places introduced on the fam trips were diverse. They included multiple hotels and resorts, and then an aquarium, a convention center and stadium in Durban, a helicopter flight around Cape Town, and more. I'd now like to talk a little bit about the context of these virtual fam trips, both in terms of their form and their function. So they have emerged from a pandemic era, and the obvious reason for this is that travel restrictions currently make organizing a Chinese travel agent fam trip to any foreign country extremely difficult. But that's not the only reason that they've been developed. The pandemic gave rise to the popularity of live streaming for virtual travel experiences in China. And this style has absolutely influenced the creation of and the positive reception for these fam trips. Viewers in China are now used to experiencing travel destinations virtually, and they understand the advantages of this format over a traditional PowerPoint for conveying in-depth and detailed information, as well as the real feeling of a place. Virtual fam trips are also much more entertaining and relaxing to watch than a PowerPoint presentation, but perhaps they're even more educational as you really get many more details and rich content. But unlike a live stream, the fam trip content is edited, so it's more condensed and it's more professional. You have the feeling of being in a destination like you would on a live stream, but you're also able to cover a lot of ground quickly. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. Now, the virtual fam trip may have arisen from the pandemic era, but it has very long-term potential to change B2B marketing forever. South African Tourism's March fam trips got around 150 viewers each for each live session. So now just imagine the cost and the logistics involved in getting 150 travel agents to South Africa or any country in the world and giving them a tour of 4 totally distinct parts of the country, including flights, hotels, visas, meals, etc. And then even if you could organize all the logistics of an in-person fam trip on that scale, how many of those travel agents would actually be available and willing to go on a major trip like that during the dates that you had planned? With the virtual fam, travel agents can watch it on their own time, even months after the live broadcast. And that's not to say that there's no more value in running an in-person fam trip, because certainly an in-person fam trip still is an incredibly valuable thing to do. But actually, the virtual model can help you to do that more efficiently. So these fam trips and the accompanying virtual roadshows that we've been doing, they're all run through a WeChat mini program developed by Dragon Trail. And that WeChat mini program provides extensive data reporting. So it's very easy for the organizer of the virtual roadshow and fam trip to see which travel agents are most engaged and which ones would be most likely to give you the biggest return on investment if you then did invite them on an in-person fam trip. At the same time, since the virtual trip is so interesting and entertaining, this can help to attract more attendees to a virtual roadshow and get them involved with that, make them excited about their meetings with the suppliers afterwards once they've seen the suppliers in the videos. Finally, I'm always talking a lot about the importance of safety to the Chinese travel market. And this isn't just in terms of pandemic prevention protocols. The Chinese market is very safety conscious overall about many things. And virtual fams are really a great way to show people, rather than just to tell them, what a destination does to ensure visitor safety. And this is something that we can see throughout South African tourism's recent virtual fam trip. This includes things like mask wearing, to the safety features in the helicopter, to the special protective gloves that you wear while you're ziplining, which allow you to slow down your speed if needed. So with that introduction to the virtual fams from this March, I would like to turn over now to Mansoor from South African Tourism to speak about the Tourism Board strategy and learnings from these virtual B2B events for the Chinese market.
Thank you very much, Sienna, and thank you for giving the opportunity to speak here today and share our experience with your audience. Okay, so I'm very excited to share this experience with you today, but before talking about the virtual fam, I thought it'd be appropriate just to give you some context for why we are doing the virtual fams and the online roadshows and everything else in China. The first thing I'd like to touch on is just to give you a snapshot of performance of South Africa tourism in the China market over the last 10 years. So you can see from 2010, just after the football is COVID pandemic, and we are still in the middle of it. But the key lesson is that we are building resilience. Our tourism trade has responded very well in that they've built the domestic market like they have in China and most other places in the world. And no doubt we will survive this and be even stronger after this. What I want to do is just quickly explain to you what is the tourism value chain from our perspective and how we do what we do within the tourism context. So on the right-hand side, we've got the source market, and on the left-hand side, destination South Africa. So our job in China is to really work with the travel suppliers and intermediaries inside China, which we call the source market trade, the OTAs, the brick and mortar agents, the international airlines and other aggregators. And for now, our strategy is to renew and build the trade community, especially post-pandemic. Obviously, we're all in it for marketing to the consumers inside China. And over here, we have our leisure tourists, our MICE tourists, as well as our business trade. And over here, over the next year, we are using mostly KL influencers on multiple social platforms to get our messages through, together with the traditional media buy and many other tools that we use to get consumer demand increased. Back in South Africa, our colleagues in head office are working with inbound operators and tier one product. And what we do there is just rejuvenate this destination trade, because a lot of them were demotivated during the pandemic. And part of our strategy is to invest resources into them and give them an opportunity and a soft landing in China again, post-pandemic. We're also doing a lot of work in the background to strengthen our enabling capabilities. For example, over the last 2 years, we've been working very hard to introduce the e-visa for Chinese tourists. So they no longer have to send their passports to the passport office. They no longer have to walk there. They can now just do everything online. They don't even need to part with their passport, and they can just hop on a plane and get a visa on arrival in South Africa. We've also looked at launching other technology platforms to help improve relations with the trade in China. So coming back to the virtual FAM and to the B2B online roadshow, what we're trying to do is establish a link between, or re-establish the link between the source market trade in China or the Chinese buyers, as well as the destination trade, because that's the most important link. And this is where Dragon Trail came in and helped us build this platform. Rather, they built their platform and we made use of it. So what happened before COVID is worth noting. There is a time BC, not too long ago, about 2 years ago, when about 40 odd trade from South Africa hopped on an airplane and booked hotels in about 3 cities across China. And we flew them around, we put up the infrastructure, the resources to help them get around, booked exhibition and hotel meeting space for them to conduct the business. That resulted in plus minus 1,000 meetings at each of these events, with about a total of 600 plus Chinese buyers. Now, this was, as you said earlier, Sienna, a very expensive exercise for the South African trade. But nevertheless, they spent money on it because there's still value coming from it. Their payback period was 6 months to a year after they invested in coming to China. So what happened after COVID? We needed to keep the brand alive. We needed to keep the relationships alive. And we approached Dragon Trail to really help us with with a virtual FAM and an online trade show. So we also achieved 1,000 plus meetings, even a little bit more than that. We had about a similar amount of exhibitors, 150 Chinese buyers, but most importantly, it was much more cost effective and saving. Resulted in people deploying that cash into other marketing activities, which was great news for us. But this didn't come without its challenges. With anything we do, you are going to experience challenges. The first challenge was that many people back in South Africa and all over the world, I guess, were suffering from what we call online fatigue. Since the beginning of the pandemic, many of them, were becoming very tired of Zoom meetings and not being able to go out and not engaging face to face. So that was a big challenge for us. There was a sheer lack of motivation, especially when it came to China, because there was no indication of when borders were going to open. Even today, there is no official indication as to when borders will open. So why would a trade go and spend all this time and effort not knowing when they're going to get the investment return? We had to address that. The other big issue we had to address was poor content with really mediocre PPT presentations that were very bland, not exciting. And what we had to do was encourage them to produce the right content. A lot of them had their budgets cut, so they were not able to spend money on anything. All they could do was just hope for people to knock on their doors and do online bookings. But there was no opportunity for them to spend money on marketing, another big challenge. And obviously, the thing that I mentioned earlier on was the closed borders from China. How do we solve for this? So we thought long and hard about solving it. The one thing we had to do was communicate timely with them, and long before the event of the virtual FAM or online roadshow. This was very important. And instead of just sending them generic emails, I had to send them personalized emails at the beginning, so they knew it was coming from my desk as opposed to an automated CRM system. We had to train them, and this is where Dragon Trail helped us a lot to train all our exhibitors in South Africa to produce the right content and to understand the system that Dragon Trail had built for them, to ensure that the meetings were conducted effectively and efficiently. For those people who didn't sometimes attend the training or didn't respond properly, we identified it instantly and within the hour sent communication to them or either followed up with a telephone call. And this helped a lot because they knew then how serious we were to actually make this thing happen. We also had to provide a lot of hope and encouragement for a lot of people and remind them how important the China market was. And for those who survive during this pandemic period, there would be a lot of reward because there would be less competition in the market afterwards. And there's going to be a lot of revenge travel and a lot of people catching up with travel. So it's going to be good after the pandemic, no doubt about that. I think personally, the most important thing to make this happen is having the right partnership and Dragon Trail's case. I've worked with them for 2-3 years. I see the platform. I saw they were committed. My team worked very well with them. And so that show and virtual FAM, and I will hand over back to you, Sienna, and await any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mansoor. So at this point, I'd like to hear from Michael to talk to us a bit about the logistics of the content creation for the virtual FAM. Really what happened on the ground in South Africa and how you managed to manage that from Shanghai.
Sienna, thank you for having me here. I'm very happy the virtual FAM trip turns out very successful and fruitful for our audience. It's not easy, and we were facing a few challenges, and I'm going to share with you the top 2 and explain how I was dealing with them. The first challenge is about people. Finding the right person to do the video shooting took a lot of time. Considering the budget and ongoing pandemic, we have to hire local talents in South Africa. I have some criteria for them. One, they need to know the place very well and have a real good taste of the highlights which they would recommend to our audience. And two, they need to be well experienced in video shooting and have their own style. And three, they need to have strong communication skills. If they have very strong local networking, that would be great. We are lucky as there are a few people interested in this project. So my team went through their works to see if they are interesting, entertaining, or inspiring, or at least educational. So we also spent a lot of time talking with them to see if they understood the requirement of this project and if they were confident about what they were going to make. So as part of the recruit process, I asked them a few questions. For example, what's your idea to present a hotel in Cape Town? What angles of shots will you make? Or are there any stories behind it? Or at least some plots you would design to attract the audience? I would be very cautious about their language style to make sure if they are capable of articulating and making the listeners not bored. So at that time, I consider myself as a very demanding HR manager to ensure we find the best people we could. And I need to tell myself constantly not to make judgments based on my own prejudice, but try to make it diversified, as that could make the two-day virtual fam trip filled with curiosity, joy, surprise, and comfort. So luckily, after a lot of hard work, we finally have 3 local guides. By the way, they need to speak fluent Chinese for sure. The second challenge is about communication. After we had a short list of the destinations that we were going to film, I need to talk with those people in charge of the promotion of these places to work out the list of highlights and the details we are going to film. For sure, they are much more knowledgeable than me, as they are locals and run the hotels, resorts, and have much more experience of activities over there, right? So my job is, on one side, I try my best to get as much information as I could by reading, researching, consulting, and watching videos online, like YouTube, to make sure we are on the same page when we discuss about what we're going to film. On the other side, I talk with the local supplier, for example, Mark Wang with Sun International Group, to find out what's new there and what we can do with a more innovative way, since the audience might know these places very well too. And I ask them to tell us more interesting stories or anecdotes about their places, so that we can make some adaptations before telling the audience. Or we can let them tell their own stories by interviewing them on site. For example, the tea farm in West Cape, the Rubels. Our local guide, Miss Long Jun, she did an interview with the manager, who briefed the audience the history of the tea and how they developed the farm. So it's actionable and everybody's happy. So preparing for the details and making sure they are attractive to the audience, we could present them in a well-designed sequence or plots is very challenging. And that needs a lot of communication. Also, the communication between the local guides and me is key to the project. I'm very cautious about the assignment and figure out who is the right guy for the right place. I need to find out their strengths For example, Miss Longjun, her style is very easygoing and friendly. She enjoys her pretty much when experiencing activities during the trip, and is capable of presenting in a very relaxing way. So as a video blogger, she previously produced a lot of footages about the hotels in Cape Town. So when she's back there, she knows what are the highlights, what could be saved for the filming. Brian, our second local guide, he is an outdoor guy. So he is the right person for the zip lining adventure through the rainforest in the national park. He worked really hard. He tried everyone and was exhausted at the end of the filming. But his sweaty face and vivid expression, very inspiring. So the audience asked a lot of questions about his feeling, the activity itself, and is it family friendly? That kind of questions. And Dr. Brett, our third local guide, he's very handsome and details-driven young man. He knows Chinese very well, and as he's been living and working in China for 10 years, so he knows pretty well what our audience want to see. And on the other side, he's from Durban, so I rely on him a lot to do the shooting in this beautiful city. One more challenge. The third challenge is about time and time difference. Almost forgot. As the schedule, is pretty tight, and we started the project before the Spring Festival. So I worked during the holiday to make sure everything is on the right track. I try my best not to get drunk during the Spring Festival. As you know, there were a lot of family gatherings and mahjong parties. So I can still remember the midnight phone talks with Longjun due to the time difference between China and South Africa. On the third day of Lunar Chinese New Year, I went to climb the Zhongnanshan mountain in central China, in Shanxi province, I don't know if anyone knows about this place. So I was very nervous at the time because I was not sure I could answer Longjun's phone call promptly, as she is about to leave for Cape Town, for the shooting. So I didn't want to miss any emergency phone calls from her. Fortunately, there's Wi-Fi signals on top of that mountain. And Longjun called as I expected. So I enjoyed a fantastic view while, talking through a few issues with her. So finding the right talent, communicating with them timely and efficiently, I think were the top two challenges that I faced. I was happy to make it happen with support and help from South African tourism. Yeah, back to you, Sienna.
Oh, thank you so much, Michael. I think it's very helpful to know kind of what was going on behind the scenes with your management of the project. So at this point, I'd like to start asking some questions of both the speakers as kind of a panel discussion, and then we can also see what kinds of questions come in from the audience. So the first question I'd like to ask, Michael, relates to what you were just talking about. You said that, so obviously we know these virtual fam trips were broadcast live at the beginning of March, but you're talking about working on them during the Spring Festival, which is the beginning of February. So if somebody wanted to do an event like this, how long do you need to prepare?
I think at least more than 1 month, 40 days, because like I said, that the team, the project consists of tour guide, cameraman, film editor, planner, and myself. Planning, just as I mentioned, planning and communication took a lot of energy and time, and logistics as well. The film shooting of each place took 2 to 3 days actually, but the filming editing takes a little bit longer. We are fortunate because we have storyline in advance. We prepare them for during the Spring Festival, we prepare for the storylines, scenarios for like 1 month. Then we send them out to do the video shooting. Then when they're back, they send back us the materials. We need, for each place, we need like 4 to 5 days to do the film editing. So I think the earlier the better for this kind of project.
And then
Enough time we have, the enough time we have, then we can make it better. Yeah, make it.
For the video shooting, did you also have to hire a camera crew to do that? And if so, did you need to find a camera crew that could speak Chinese so that they were able to follow what was going on in the videos?
In this case, we are lucky because Longjun and Dr. Brett have their cameraman with them during the shooting. They're professional. Brian did the job by himself with GoPro. What I do here is to make sure to talk them through specific shots, when to take long shot, when to take medium shot, or wide angle shot, what scenario needs close up or zoom in. They have to be well planned in advance. So the more detailed work we prepare, again, the better we can carry it out outside.
Thank you. Now, Mansoor, some questions for you. So my first question is about tourism partners. Obviously, South African tourism has many local partners. So I wanted to ask how you chose which partners you would work with to feature during these virtual fam trips.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. So the first thing, we are government, and as government, we had to ensure transparency and fairness when working with public funds and resources. So we also needed to ensure that when we showcase the destination and sell it effectively, we need to put our best foot forward. We can't just take any of these establishments in South Africa. So we had to carefully strike the right balance and select those establishments we thought were really good candidates for showcasing the destination, as well as those candidates that showed some potential. So we wanted to be fair and be inclusive. What we did after that is we asked many of these establishments to provide us with content, with audiovisual content, stills, etc. And Michael, as you know, curated a lot of these. So when we received the content, we used the content we knew we could easily sell in the destination, in the source market. And then we also worked with those potentially good candidates to help them improve their content and get it right for the production, because we wanted to put up a world-class production. So I think this resulted in a fair and equitable outcome that everybody was pleased with.
And Mansoor, another issue that you brought up during your presentation, talking about the challenges, was people who have lack of motivation. Obviously, we're 2 years into the pandemic. There hasn't been almost any Chinese outbound tourism during this time. How do you get the suppliers to be excited about participating in a virtual roadshow or a virtual fam trip at this point?
Yeah, another very good question. Sometimes we take these things for granted, but throughout the pandemic, we had to lead by example. So it's their business. They have to run it. They have to make a profit. They have to increase occupancies. But what we have to do as the South African Tourism Board was to lead by example and share all the marketing activations we did in China with all our stakeholders through regular media releases and regular communication. So this motivation just didn't happen for the virtual fam or for the online roadshow. It was a continuous exercise from the beginning, something that we always do. So we didn't take our foot off the gas pedal. We continued with what we did before. So in other words, we had to show them the commitment throughout, and we had to keep the brand alive. So regular sharing of insights, such as the rapid rate of domestic recovery, was a good news story. We had to constantly create a positive messaging environment, especially about the potential rewards for those businesses that survived the pandemic. And then what we also did at the end is, because in every industry, no matter where you are, you get those leaders who we call change champions, and those who motivate others so that they can see, everybody in the industry can see what their peers are doing with regard to marketing. So we also amplified those back into the market about what the peers were doing in the tourism industry in South Africa. And we also invited them to talk about how they are surviving and how are they introducing agile techniques applied throughout the pandemic. So that helped with motivation quite a lot. Yeah.
Thank you. Now, after doing this project, were there any kind of learnings or opportunities for the future that you found that you weren't expecting going into the project to begin with?
Yeah. So personally, I'm always up for a good challenge. Like throughout my professional career, I've always been put in tight corners, whether it was the Ebola virus and many others, and now COVID. This is no different. But I think what we all should learn is to create opportunity out of adversity, especially during this pandemic. And for the virtual farm, initially we struggled getting really good content from the attractions and accommodation establishments in South Africa. And as I've said before, this was because their budgets were cut, and also because the industry generally lacked creativity when it came to showcasing their properties. Many establishments often showcase their properties through like bland and boring PPTs on PowerPoint and made very little use of video or short video, for example. Now, personally, I'm a very big fan of travel vlogs. I watch it all the time during my spare time. Always looking at YouTube new videos of my favorite travelers who present very good destinations with short 5-minute, 10-minute videos. And because I watch so much travel blogs on social media, I actually wished for our tourism establishments back home to adopt a similar format to travel blogs to showcase the establishments. And that's when it just suddenly clicked in my mind that, there's a film industry in South Africa that's world-class. It does Hollywood and Bollywood blockbusters. So I reached out to my contacts and I then proposed an idea to the film industry in which the film industry could use their world-class skills, production skills and spare capacity to help produce content for the tourism industry. So in South Africa, we have some of the best film production skills and many Hollywood and Bollywood blockbusters that are produced in Cape Town. I realized that if this idea worked, it could be a game changer and a really good business development opportunity that will create jobs and economic development for the people who badly need those jobs back in South Africa. So it's still in development. And the way this will work is that South Africa Tourism will procure the services from the film industry to produce something like a content marketing package according to our specifications. And it's like a complete marketing package consisting of videos, of stills, 15 or 30-second clips for social media like Instagram, etc. And then these tourist establishments, they would then apply to South Africa Tourism to be a recipient of this marketing package. And then we distribute it to them, and it's a win-win for all because we would get world-class content to showcase the destination much better. And the tourist establishment, they would then get access to the same content to sell their product much better and more effectively, which, by the way, could also be used once the pandemic is over, once face-to-face happens again, because people need really good content to sell. So that to me was, I think, the biggest innovation that came out of adversity. And sometimes when you're pushed up against a tight corner, you come out with this creative ideas, don't you, Sienna? Thank you.
Thank you. I've got one, I guess we could address this afterwards. I will be sending out an email to everybody who attended today with a video recording and as well as the presentation slides. But we also had a question, Michael, about getting, I see that you were typing an answer to that, a link to our guide's blog to watch. So perhaps if we do have links or QR codes, that could help the audience to see the travel blogs from the tour guides that we worked with for the virtual fam, then we could include that in the mail out that goes to everybody so that you could see that as well. And I can also look into including QR codes or links so that you could actually go to watch the full fam trips from South African tourism, if that is something that interests you, and if you can follow along in Mandarin. So if we have any other questions from the audience, please do send those in now. And I also have one more thing to share. From Mansoor, which is video content for South Africa. It's Mansoor, maybe you're the best person to introduce it, but it is a new video campaign for South African tourism's global marketing called Live Again. I'm not sure if there's anything else you'd like to add to that.
No, I just noticed, I saw there was one comment about addressing a COVID situation. Now there's an increase in the pandemic. I'm not too sure if you addressed it yet, and I don't know at whom that question is directed before I go on to Live Again. So just quickly, I think maybe Michael is in a better position to answer this because he's Chinese and he's closer to the situation in Shanghai. But if he's got any ideas when the pandemic will come to an end, I think next year, but yeah, that was just one of the questions. If it's okay, I'll just quickly talk about Live Again. Live Again was a campaign that was developed by our headquarters in South Africa. It's a global campaign to literally live again. You know, during the last 2 years, there were children born and grandparents have not seen their children. People got married, people have died and passed on. There's so many things that were put on pause. And Live Again is about this girl traveling, I think, out of London to South Africa and starting to travel again. And it's basically a short story of 3 minutes long, and it shows how this girl is living again, in essence. We've got a number of other short videos that's cut out from this and other social media which we're going to be using throughout the year, hopefully when everything gets back to normal. So I believe you're going to be playing it, Sienna. Thank you.
Yes, I will. I think I might answer the questions in the Q&A first and then move on to that. There's one question about how the content from the virtual fam trip was shared and how it was promoted. So it was promoted to the Chinese travel trade as part of South African tourism's virtual roadshow in March of this year. And so that was promoted through Dragon Trail's channels. We have a database of around 60,000 Chinese travel trade professionals. So it was promoted to them, although there were also buyers that were especially invited to attend the roadshow for the one-to-one meetings, although anybody could join and watch the virtual fam videos. And those are available to watch via playback as well. So those were promoted through our channels and also directly to Chinese travel agents. And then I believe South African tourism would have also been promoting that to trade contacts in China. And just, I guess, Michael, if you do want to join in on this, the question about how the recent increase in COVID cases in China could affect the timeline for the resumption of outbound tourism. I think those are the kind of big questions that none of us really know the answer to. Right now, Michael is in Shanghai, which is entering into kind of an experiment of shutting down and testing half the city for 4 days and then half the city for another 4 days. So we'll see how those things work out. And I know that China is trying to find kind of creative new ways to control the pandemic. And as far as how that will affect the timeline for reopening, I think that's anybody's guess at this point. And that we would still expect to see probably some kind of limited reopening of the Chinese mainland towards the end of this year, with things really getting going into next year. Oh, Michael, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, at the moment, yeah. first of all, I wish I could have the access to the authority to know about the timeline, about the uplifting of the restriction of the border, but I didn't. But what I can share here is that I can feel the sentiment is very high on mainland China, and everyone wants to get out, to travel abroad. Yeah. So I think that the government is trying every effort to make it happen as soon as possible, because it's good not only for Chinese tourists, but for the outside of the world outside. So I think I still, I'm very optimistic, and I think stay positive, and it will come soon. And
Okay.
according to the Chinese old saying, or China has a long history of like 5,000 years, more than 5,000 years. We have the traditional wisdom that based on the previous experience, the worst pandemic won't last more than 3 years. So if it still works, then the pandemic will come to the end at the end of this year. So that's what we are looking forward to.
Yes, very much looking forward to that. And then, so just one more question, should be a quite easy one for Mansoor before I play the video, is about the procedure immigration for South Africa. So if one wanted to visit South Africa at this point, what kinds of things do you need to prepare? Is there testing, vaccination requirement?
Okay, yeah. So I'm pleased to tell you, as of last week, our president announced that all you need is a vaccination certificate. If you don't have one, you can get a negative PCR test. And I think that on arrival, if you don't have either, you can get a vaccination on the airport.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, I don't know if it's for everybody, but the service is right there, and it's offered to many people. And I think it's the Pfizer one. So please go book your tickets, hop on that first plane to South Africa. And it really is very easy now. I just came back from China a few days ago, and I've just landed in Johannesburg, I think 2 days ago. And it's so efficient and so effective to get through. I think for China outbound, for those people inside China, if you want to travel, depending which airport or where you're going domestically, you have to get a COVID certificate. A COVID negative PCR test certificate. Only to move internally in China, but once you board the plane, there may be a requirement for a PCR test, negative PCR test. But once you arrive in South Africa, it's just a vaccination certificate or a negative PCR valid for 72 hours.
And do you know which vaccines are recognized by the South African government? Is it everything?
I think it's everything
approved by the WHO.
Yeah. Okay. So it's including Sinopharm, Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson. There are quite a few, I believe, that's out there.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it does seem like more and more countries around the world will accept all of the WHO approved vaccines, which includes the vaccines that are being used in mainland China. So that is very good news. All right, so thank you so much to the speakers and the audience. And I think we'll now end this